That was fantastic. Must work on the bio. Right. This is a real pleasure. It's amazing. There's seats at the front here, guys. Come on. I feel lonely up here. It's a real pleasure to be here, not only as COO of the awesome Delta Group. It's a real milestone for me, but I'm delighted to be here, but also first time ever having a job in the New Zealand insurance market. So I'm amongst friends, amongst very good company here. So thank you very much for the warm welcome. Today, we've talked about the theme, which is strengthening resilience in a changing world. Nowhere have we seen resilience quite like we have in the last 18 months. Can everyone see the slide? Yep. I mean, so COVID, we've really seen the world get together and really respond to this in a dynamic way. And what I'm going to do now is very, very quickly, in 14 minutes and 11 seconds, talk you through what I see as the three biggest areas of sort of significant change that is affecting the global landscape, particularly for insurers, and quite what we're doing to respond to that and build resilience. Firstly is the risk revolution. I like to call it that. I mean, we can call it emerging risks, changing risks, but they're changing significantly, not just pandemics, but across the board. So I want to give you a few really interesting stats. Firstly, you've got to start with Nat Cat. Nat Cat is still the largest risk change in the world. If you look at this, this is brilliant. $190 billion US of economic losses we suffered in 2020. And that was not a year, not one of the heaviest loss-making years we've had. That was, according to Swiss Re, the fifth since they started producing these reports. And what's really interesting from an insurance perspective, of that 190 billion US, only 81 billion was insured. So I know there's some smart people in the room, some brokers who are very good at maths. Come on, someone tell me what the gap is. That's a gap of about 110 billion. So today in 2021, we're still seeing a significant protection gap for natural catastrophes, notwithstanding the huge amount of work that's been going on globally to bridge that gap in terms of insurance coverage, in terms of education and awareness. It's still a significant gap, which is not closing terribly fast. So that's both, I think, an opportunity and a challenge for us here in New Zealand as it is globally. The second thing that I find really interesting and alarming about this is historically it was very much around hurricanes, around earthquakes, what we call primary perils. Well, last year, of that 190 billion, 70% of that was what Swiss Re call secondary perils, such as wildfires, as we've seen so prolifically in Australia, and thunderstorms. So not the sort of losses that we ordinarily have priced for, have a huge amount of data around. And these are coming because these are exacerbated, according to Swiss Re, because of climate change and because more and more of us are living in urban areas, living in cities. So just touching upon climate change, those remember Superstorm that's a little easy to say. Superstorm, no, still can't say it. Sandy. Remember Sandy? Blimey, tongue twister. 2017, it's the second largest tropical cyclone on record. Hit the eastern seaboard of the US. Economically, that caused between $50 and $70 billion of economic losses. Now, that loss was exacerbated by climate change. There was approximately a 20-centimetre sea level rise since the 1950s on the southern tip of Manhattan, and that sea level rise caused ground-up surge losses, which increased by 30% in New York alone. So that's a 30% increase of losses because of climate change. So that raises huge issues for us in terms of the way we approach risk, in terms of the way we approach resilience, and also the way we price our business. Swiss Re also go on to say that if we don't take any mitigation steps, so if we ignore climate change and we don't prevent or build resilience to climate change, there could be a hit as much as 18% on global GDP. So in terms of economic output globally, we could see an 18% reduction in that by 2050. And that relates to only a 3.2 degrees increase in temperatures globally. So it's still a very, very significant risk. And again, you think I work for Swiss Re, right? With all the advertising for them, that their group chief economist says it very, very well. And I think this picture is a fantastic image really reflecting the current state. If we don't do something, it's a systemic risk for the whole world. Unlike COVID, it doesn't have an expiry date. Let's just quickly talk about COVID. Who thinks then? I've talked about climate change losses, 190 billion. It's significant. Does anyone know? Can anyone have a guess today? Stick your hand up or yell out where you think COVID losses are as insured losses today. Anyone brave enough? I don't mind. Arjun.
0.
Nice, I wish. 36 billion. So insured losses, or at least insured loss and reserve estimates, which of course will move probably still a long way. We're currently looking at 36 billion. And what's really interesting, economists believe that these sort of losses could lead to a 4.5% reduction in GDP over time. That's a potential insured loss in the sort of 30 to 40 billion against a 4 trillion potential economic loss. So again, for mathematicians, that's a significant protection gap. Just quickly, another couple of points. I talked about urbanisation. This is a picture of Mumbai in the 1900s. 13% of people lived there in the 1900s. Today, that's Mumbai. 54% of people globally live in cities, and by 2050, 66% of people live in cities around the world. So that's having an increased impact on climate change, on our infrastructure for dealing with risk. In fact, Lloyd's produced a report in 2018 called the Lloyd's City Risk Index, which looks specifically at cities' exposure to risk and how resilient they are and how well they are prepared for emerging risks. They looked at 279 cities around the world from 22 threats, and there was a $546 billion potential loss to economic output from those threats. And the interesting point I want to make here is, whilst I've been talking about natural catastrophes, Lloyd's research showed that man-made risks or human-made risks were going to be 59% of all risks in the future. They also found that if we improved our resilience, those numbers would drop by 73 billion. We've also seen geopolitical tensions. We've seen a China-US tensions. We've seen Brexit having a big impact on the way we respond and manage risk. And that alone has led to huge losses and costs for the industry. And we're more globally connected today. With interconnected systems around the globe, we're seeing significant increase in supply chain. Craig touched on health and wellness. COVID has really given us not only an economic crisis, but a human crisis in terms of the way we look after our people. So what I'd just say in conclusion is that we need to have a forward-looking approach when we look at risk. It's no longer, as the past, a proxy for the future. We need forward-looking data and forward-looking risk management approaches. Quickly on the technology revolution, this is the world we're living in today. This must look very familiar to all of you. Microsoft, at the end of April last year, two months into, that should be 2020, 2 months into the pandemic, they saw 200 million Teams in a single day. And the Microsoft CEO said that's 2 years worth of digital transformation in one single day, given COVID. So we are talking about significant technological change. We're moving from systems that were very much just you've seen systems like this. I love these systems, like a Sega Turbo. They were just simply record-keeping systems storing data for insurers. We're now moving to a world which is much more conversational, where our systems are talking to each other, and in the future, our systems are going to be cognitive. IT is going to be cognitive. Not only will it be talking to each other, but it'll be making the decisions for us. Think Minority Report. McKinsey said that, and I love this stat, the best performing 20% of insurers globally capture 100% of the profit. I mean, I can talk about that for ages, but how are they doing that? They're doing that through digital transformation. They're doing it because of consumer expectation, competitive pressure from other players in the food chain. They're doing it because they need to automate and optimize processes. Costs and margin pressure is killing businesses because of natural disasters and thanks to COVID-19. The final point I'll make on this is this digital revolution, this change in technologies globally is leading to what we call digital ecosystems. And digital ecosystems, as you can see from this image, is where all these businesses now are interconnected. And McKinsey estimate that by 2025, it'll be a $60 trillion industry. And a good example of that is Alibaba, when they merged with Tencent and Ping An. And I'm sure you probably know well, to form ZhongAn, a digital ecosystem insurer, underwriting and providing lifestyle consumption goods. So this is the future. This is very much the future and the future opportunity for the business. Is data the new oil? I love this slide. This slide really says it all. Everything I've been saying about risk management, about looking forward, all depends on the quality of the data. Historically, we've had a very defensive strategy around data. Here's, everyone know who this is? Seen this picture before? It's my old shop. There's 70 billion pounds of specialty revenue, so specialty business, the business that Delta excels in. There's 70 billion pounds of that going into the London market every year, right? And of this business, that's 150 classes of business and 150 entirely separate data sets. So, and they're still done basically manually. So that has a 2% hit on your combined ratio. And when margins are under pressure, when investment returns are pretty much gone, by improving your ability to capture data, my slides have just gone. You can significantly improve your profit. So now my third and final few minutes, and I'll go a little bit slower now because I've caught up. Whew. Was it the coffee or? I want to talk a little bit about the insurance revolution because I think the insurance industry globally is changing as well and changing pretty rapidly. And what I'm going to talk about here is it's the traditional roles that we all love and that we know. We have distribution in the room, we have manufacturers in the room, we have capital providers, probably not in the room, but those three parts of the value chain, as you can see on this image here, have not changed. But the roles, each of those parties, there's a blurring and there's a demarcation of those traditional lines. So we're playing in each other's places, that's what I'm trying to say. And there's a bit of a tension. Insurtechs have come in as well, and insurtechs have changed that. Risks are changing, and that has changed the role that players play, and the consumer expectation is changing. That's not just personal lines. So this is what it looks like today. This is what I think what the insurance value chain looks like today. It's blurred. Competitive and economic pressures are blurring these lines between brokers, insurers, and reinsurers. So what do I mean by that? Let's look at distribution. Brokers are consolidating. There's been a lot of M&A in the broking world, but they're continuing to consolidate to gain greater market power. They're becoming de facto risk managers. They're concentrating on the advisory and the consultancy side. And also they're taking on greater underwriting responsibility. So they're competing with insurers for the manufacturing piece of the value chain. What about insurtechs? Well, insurtechs have come in and played all sorts of roles in the space. They're right across the value chain today, from capital to distribution. They are changing the risk landscape quite significantly. While brokers want to own the customer relationship, insurtechs are augmenting that by giving them data and cross-analysing insurers' value propositions. Insurers are also disintermediating brokers, and we've seen examples of that with insurtechs like Lemonade. Manufacturing, well, insurers are trying much, much harder to become more relevant to policyholders, and we see that. They're competing with brokers for the role of trusted advisor and risk manager. And there's a tug of war, I think, between insurers and brokers today, and that will increase. Insurers and reinsurers are at odds. Insurers are ceding less to reinsurers, and reinsurers then competing with insurers by writing primary lines. And we've seen that in agriculture and other lines like cyber. Insurers are leaving relationships with insurtechs to give themselves a much better value proposition on the front end. Capital, we love capital. So one of the major changes we've seen is going from trade capital supporting insurance to an influx of capital from the financial markets, particularly Bermuda with the ILS market, that bringing the fluidity of risk and capital together to provide more available capital for the market. So I think that alternative capital market is here to stay. It's a capital and asset class in its own right today, and it's even coming into the space of primary lines and writing primary insurance. To give you an example, Markel, one of the largest insurance corporations in the world, just bought Nephila Fund, which is one of the largest ILS funds. So they're also now understanding that you've really got to own that whole ecosystem as part of the insurance of the future. Right, last couple of slides really in closing, just to summarise, because that was the most rapid canter through the insurance emerging risk landscape. A few last slides. I mean, we are an industry that's still very much a people industry. It's a relationship industry, and it's built on trust. And trust is absolutely paramount if we're going to continue to build resilience in this world. A couple of final points. Firstly, we've got clearly a role to help the world be more resilient. That's how I think we're obligated as an insurance industry. How do we do that? Well, firstly, I think we need to encourage society to invest in risk transfer, obviously. We need to encourage more sale and purchase of insurance products, and we need to create an awareness and an education to facilitate the closing of that protection gap. And that protection gap is across, in my mind, all of the various types of risks that we're facing. And that'll obviously mitigate the financial impact, which is currently falling to governments, to communities, to us as taxpayers. we need to build simpler insurance products. We need to make insurance simpler, more accessible, more affordable, to better protect our customers. By doing so, by making it simpler and easier to understand, obviously, then we become more relevant and we remain trusted, and trust is absolutely paramount. We need to safeguard our customers' reputations and intellectual property. We need to sort of increase and help them safeguard and prepare for the changing risk landscape. We need to work together in private and public partnerships. That's with governments, with communities, with various societies and bodies to strengthen our resilience. We bring expertise, we bring product, but they bring distribution and a conducive operating environment. We need to be innovative in our products and services, given the way risks are changing. And then finally, my last couple of seconds, just a thought to leave you with. From my experience, I think we respond much better to change and much better to changing risk when we work together, when we cooperate. I mean, it's a bit glib, it's a bit of a throwaway, but it works, right? We've seen it with COVID, where the world has tried to cooperate together and has done, in parts, a very good job. And I think as an industry, we can cooperate in this space for the benefit of our collective customers. I personally don't think it's a competitive advantage. I think it's something that we're all obligated to do, to work as a marketplace. And that will continue to build trust and resilience. So thank you very much for listening. If you record it, you can slow it right down and hear it in English next time. Thank you.